Welcome to Sat Interviews with your host, Farai Ian Movuti. Today I sit down with Tapiwa Virimi, who is the head of Diaspora Meds. Right here in the diaspora, in the center of London, we get to discuss what the opportunities are, one, but more fundamentally, what is in it for you. Now, what we've learned about the healthcare industry in Africa is that it has been exorbitant in terms of cost. Now, he tries to deal with that cost factor, and hence why he was motivated to introduce this company. Now, given the fact that the diaspora collectively in Africa is contributing over 100 billion to the African market in USD, he found a focal point for us to collectively build up our healthcare system. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Yet again, thank you for joining me. My name is Farai Ian Movuti. Welcome, yet again, to the Southern African Times. Tapiwa Virima, thank you so much for joining us here at SAT Interviews. I just want to understand, you are in one of the, perhaps, when you consider industries, it's a very difficult industry by virtue of its perception. You're in the medical insurance industry, doing a lot of work around the world, currently expanding into your African market base, which I think is quite impressive. But I think critically, what my viewers would want to understand is who is the man behind this? So, in short, who is Tapiwa? Why insurance?
Thank you very much, Farai, for having me, and welcome to our viewers. My name is Tapiwa Virima, the Managing Director and Founder of Diaspora Meds. Unfortunately, I'm an investment banker by profession, turned insurer now. Turned into a passion by the need that grew during the COVID time, whereupon we were just incepting a business to send medication around for the diaspora markets to be able to cater for just your basic vitamins and all that they could send back home because they were not available. And so basically we incepted a business in 2020 that would assist people to send back medication back home. We realized the quantum of money that people were sending back home just to cater for supplements. And we said if we could insure people, because we realized that there was a big need in terms of healthcare around the African market at that time, around the Zimbabwean market, which then grew into the African market. So Tapiwa Virima is an investment banker by profession, passionate Chelsea fan. Yeah.
Quite the losing team at the moment, but yeah, sure.
We'll come right.
Now, tell me, so insurance, given the gravitas that we're talking about when it comes to how families relate to it within the diaspora, because in my understanding of your work, you are targeting the diaspora market, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, in targeting the diaspora market, the diaspora has often had a difficult experience when it comes to how it is they're able to facilitate for healthcare in country. So be it Zimbabwe or Kenya, in all the markets that you're currently in, I'm sure you'll be able to expand on that. The point being, the healthcare market is quite complex. Now, how do you guys simplify that experience?
Okay, great. That's a great question, Farai. So thank you for that. Basically, insurance penetration in Africa is very low. It's sitting at about 2.8% in terms of insurance penetration. What this basically means is about 2.8% of the African populace has access to insurance markets, whether it's short-term insurance, whether it's commercial lines, whether it's your healthcare insurance or life insurance. What then happens is that where we found the gap is the nexus between the migration of Africa into the diaspora. Basically, at this point in time, you find that the immigration rate of Africa, or the migration rate of Africans into the first world countries, is very high. And this has actually spoken into the remittances that are going into Africa. As of 2024, it is estimated that, according to factual reports, that $100 billion is remitted into Africa by the African community living in the diaspora. And that is more than the FDI rate of what's going back into Africa. Of that amount of money, more than 40% of the money is going into healthcare, which means 40 billion is going into the healthcare system to purchase drugs to be able to access healthcare systems. What the African diaspora then doesn't know is that it is cheaper to insure their loved ones back home than to actually send back money for health access back home. I'll give you an example. on average, an operation, whether it's a hip replacement or anything, is going to range between $5,000 for just one occurrence, as opposed to the fact that health premiums for a person on an annual basis could actually be less than $500 for a person across Africa in any way. I see it as an exposure and as a literacy point of view, from an insurance point of view, that is lacking, because basically the African market is not well cognizant of the fact that insurance actually, a solution to solving bigger financial problems that they could then encounter. What we've seen is that there's an improvement in the literacy rate as they go into first world countries, because when they get exposed to insurance solutions, they are then abreast the fact that they do need health insurance and other forms of insurance for their loved ones back home to be able to shortcut on the spend in terms of what the ultimate spend is.
Let's talk about the spend a little bit. It tends to be quite exorbitant, and that's why people tend to avoid insurance companies. So tell me about the spend in as far as it relates to the African market as someone who's from the diaspora. So for example, I'll give you, let's try and make it as practical as we can.
Yeah.
If I am based in the UK and I'm paying family insurance, let's say, your package if you have one, and I'm focused primarily on ensuring that anytime my mother goes into hospital, I can cover my bases. Now, break down the numbers down for me and quantify, or rather not quantify, but justify those numbers.
Okay. So basically insurance is cheaper because I'll give you practical examples, Farai. So your average premium for someone above the age of 65 across the African continent is going to be, say, $100, slightly plus on a monthly basis, which comes about to about, say, £80 or so on a monthly basis. That person on average, 60% of that population is likely diagnosed with your common chronic conditions such as diabetes, such as arthritis, such as high blood pressure.
So that's your worst case.
This is your average case.
Okay. This is an average case?
Yeah, average case.
Okay.
Your worst case is there's cancer, need for hip replacements, need for knee replacement, etc. That's your worst case.
I see.
So these average chronic conditions are going to cost you an average of $80 plus on a monthly basis to be able to access just the medication if you're not dealing with possibly type 2 diabetes.
And do I need to pay any additional funds after?
Well,
let's say, hypothetically, my mom is now in hospital, and I try to use my insurance. Are there any additional funds I need to pay?
Well, if you've taken premium policies, like the ones that we have, you don't have to pay additional policies. I was going to come to the aspect of just GP consultations and specialists. With GP consultations, your average cost across Africa will range anything from $30 to $60, which is basically, let's say, £30 to £50. And then on an average basis, your specialist consultations are going to cost you between £80 to £120 on a monthly basis.
So what you're alluding to is separate to your own insurance policy.
So
you're simply saying that this is the
policy.
average in the market. If you go in naked by yourself, this is what it costs you.
Yes.
But the comparison would be this. Okay.
So basically, this is for an uninsured person. On the average, then you then find that your average spend on healthcare could be $6,000 on a yearly basis, if not more. And I'm sure that our audience could be able to allude to this because they're sending thousands of dollars in healthcare on a yearly basis. And the unfortunate
So in other words, you're saying that you're saving the money.
We save the money because the unfortunate incident is that there's mispricing that then happens, whereupon the service providers in country at any point of view are taking advantage of the fact that you've got support coming from the diaspora, and there's an illusion that the diaspora is moneyed, and because they're moneyed, they've got endless pockets that can be able to support any form of healthcare bills. Whereas insurance is regulated, and if you're insured, it ensures that your loved ones are paying in price of regulation in country. So basically insurance then saves you money, and we are trying to drive insurance for medical bills across Africa to ensure that people are not paying exorbitant bills, and we're saving the money, and then basically driving money to be able to change the healthcare space in Africa.
Okay. Let's talk about the healthcare space in Africa. What we do know about the healthcare space in Africa is that in terms of price point, it's been very high. And there are a lot of challenges when it comes to access, access be it to healthcare systems, medication, and so forth. It's always been a challenge, even oxygen to a great extent. Now, we here in the diaspora, we always rely on the fact that perhaps given the fact that we have access to resources, right, irrespective of class, we can at least take care of our family within a healthcare context. Now, your role has been to sort of facilitate the ambitions of a diaspora-based community that intends to ensure that all of its relatives and so forth are taken care of. Now, in looking at the system, right, and the aspect of people that are looking to get critical care support and so forth, at times it's delayed as a consequence, perhaps maybe of fees and cost. Your value proposition here is that you can alleviate that. Now, can you demonstrate to me? Is there an example you can give me of how you've done that in the recent past?
Okay, great question, Farai. So basically, what then happens is that there's a big north and south gap, as you've said, in Africa when it comes to access to healthcare. The first big north and south gap is the fact of access, like you've rightly, alluded to. When we talk about the north and south gap, the basic perception is that the general populace from your lower class to your middle class in Africa should access public health care, and only your upper class should be able to access private health care due to the exorbitant cost of access to health care. Insurance then bridges that gap and brings access to the northern side of healthcare within the African context. What we've done in different markets, namely Zimbabwe, Ghana, Kenya, is that we've been able to leverage the diaspora to be able to ensure there are people in Zimbabwe, in Kenya, in Ghana, in Nigeria, and in different markets where we're still going into and we continue to penetrate into, whereupon they're paying reasonable premiums and being able to access the northern side of healthcare and your top end high care, because we are the ones that through our underwriters then pay the claims on behalf of these clients, and they don't have to foot the cost of medical care. They are only footing the cost of insurance. So throughout, we've then been able to bridge that gap where people are living, whether their loved ones, be it in the outskirts of Kenya, be it in the rural areas of Zimbabwe, be it in the downside of Ghana. We've been able to bring those people to be able to access private healthcare within the context of the top private healthcare, of Africa. So,
in other words, you're saying that you're creating healthcare parity when it comes to access.
100%.
And you are saying that your packages are so much accessible that people will equally have the quality of care that any person in a high esteemed class range, if we are to use that term, would have access to. That's what you're saying.
100%. And I'm proud to say that we've been able to do that. Even some people from the rural areas have been able to access private healthcare, ambulances, your Group A hospitals across the countries that we operate in. So basically, it's been an illusion that private healthcare is a luxury. It is not a luxury. It's something that we can access in terms of if preparation is done adequately by anyone. And we're educating the diaspora market to be able to know that you can be able to cater for your loved ones in any country to be able to access private healthcare from a point of view of parity, without knowing that private healthcare is an illusion. That's just actually a myth that doesn't exist. When resources are adequately planned and adequately executed into the right channels, anyone can be able to access private healthcare, and no one should reduce their loved ones to accessing public health care that we know that is largely dilapidated in Africa.
Okay, so maybe you can go into the cost factor of that. So typically, if I come from, let's say, you're in an African context, a high density is, for viewers' sake, is what you would call a ghetto. Now, if I'm from there, what is the cost aspect? Is it a plural context, or is it dependent on circumstance?
So packages are, our model is we model the packages to be individual specific and need specific. Healthcare needs are not universal, and they are not a one package and a one size fits all.
Well, what's the cheapest one could pay for?
You could be paying from $5 depending on your health needs. Maybe that could be a child. Yeah, and that could go up to $200 per month depending on the individual.
Okay.
So
it's a bespoke service.
It's a bespoke service. Okay. A cancer client and a non-chronic medication client, the price is likely going to differ. So we are able to tailor make products that suit the needs of people across the African market. But let me also then say that prices are also dependent on geography. The price of healthcare in Kenya is likely different from the price of healthcare in Zimbabwe, and it's primarily different to the price of healthcare in Ghana, and it's primarily different from the price of healthcare in Nigeria. There's so many demographics that then come to play, but also a lot of modeling is done around what are the needs of the individual. We want to tailor make needs that are based. So our team then looks into what are the needs of a person in Nigeria vis-a-vis a person in Ghana, vis-a-vis a person in Kenya, vis-a-vis a person in Malawi, Zimbabwe, Zambia, etc.
No, I get that. But what makes you unique? I mean, given the fact that you have to, one, it's a bespoke service, that's one, that the circumstances are quite clear to me. But more fundamentally, if you're looking at the local healthcare system, those systems equally have within that constituency medical health, insurance suppliers. What makes you stand out? What's your unique selling point? What makes you different?
So
why should they go for you instead of the other local players?
Okay, so look, a lot of aspects make us stand out, and I'll just say a few. Number one, we are renowned across the African market. We've got more than 50 underwriters across the African market and the most trusted diaspora partner across the African market because of our unique selling proposition. We understand the diaspora market in a unique way from the needs of the diaspora market in terms of the payment solutions that they need to come up with, the needs that they need to do from a remittance point of view back home, and also from a budget point of view, what exactly speaks to the diaspora. We then tailor make this and infuse this into local underwriters that exist in different segments of the African market, and understanding the different diaspora markets from an affordability point of view, different LSMs that exist to be able to ensure that everyone has access to private healthcare through different LSMs, through different underwriters, through different service providers. We've got more than 5,000 service providers across the African continent that accept our solution. We've got telemed solutions. We've got the best innovation around healthcare systems in the world. We've got second opinion whereupon different people within the African context are able to access private healthcare here within the UK, in America, and be able to interface with different different service providers. So we infuse local underwriting solutions, the best of service providers within the African context, and still be able to then bring them into the interface of the first world countries at affordable premiums across the world. So we're an affordable, dynamic, and agile player within the market, and that makes us very special.
Okay. Okay, great. So I understand that. Now, let's take it back a little bit to the constituency where you're headquartered. So am I correct to say that you're headquartered in South Africa?
100%.
Right. Now, South Africa currently is going through a controversial moment. There is a group led by South Africans, the people rather that are native to South Africa. And like most countries, what we're seeing is an anti-immigrant sentiment. But these guys, they take it up a notch. They are going into hospitals, physically removing people from public hospitals, in the name of immigration, and being anti the fact that there are people accessing the South African healthcare system who happen to be foreign. Now, one would wonder, you guys are in health insurance, and you, like you said, you can work with private business and so forth. And at the end of the day, private businesses simply care about the bottom line. Now, are there any solutions you've been introducing to help this scourge of Zimbabweans, Mozambicans, Africans in general, that are failing to access healthcare systems in South Africa as a consequence of the deterrency created by this group called Dudula?
So fortunately, yes, Farai. What we've then done is that we've created a product for African immigrants in South Africa that allows them to access health insurance in South Africa across private medical service providers. Obviously, the sentiment within the group that you've spoken about is that the access of one good diminishes the access of, when you talk about public goods, the access of one good might diminish the access of those that have rights to access the good, which may be correct in some sense, I don't know. But the private sector doesn't give sentiment that if you access a service, it diminishes your access to one service. If there's 1 million loaves of bread and there's 900,000 users, it doesn't diminish the fact that if you buy 1.5 loaves, it diminishes the use of the other, of the other end consumer of the product. So private healthcare gives you a right to be able to access regardless of immigration status within the country. So what we've done is we've created a product under Diaspora Meds and partnered with some local service providers, I think, which is more than 3,000 service providers that then allow Africans to be able, whether it's also South Africans and even as well African immigrants, that allow them to be able to access healthcare. It's pretty much a new product which is about 2 months old, and it's taken off on the market, and this is primarily also to address these needs that have come through. So we are very sensitive to societal needs, and we're always on the board to be able to react to those societal needs. So we have curated that, and we envisage that the product is going to storm out of the market in terms of helping the African populace on the market. So whilst the bottom line is important, we also put community before ourselves and be able to see what we can be able to do to respond to the needs of markets regardless of geography.
Okay, great. Now, and that's a good point that you make there about bottom line being important and so forth. Now, can you how would you demonstrate to me that these people in South Africa can benefit from this particular potential package, if you will?
So understanding the immigration dynamics of the African populace, and not just the African populace, but any populace within the South African context, what we've done is created an easy product from a KYC point of view. In terms of
KYC meaning?
Know your client.
Okay.
There's regulation around joining people onto financial products. So our KYC policies are very quite flexible. We've partnered with Sanlam to be able to provide, which is quite.
And who is Sanlam?
Sanlam is a renowned, it's one of the top 3 insurers in the country. In South Africa. So we've partnered with Sanlam to be able to provide a product that then caters for our target market. It is underwritten by a company called Generic Health, Generic Insurance. So in that regard, then we're then able to provide a product that caters for this populace, with minimal KYC restrictions. At the same time, we're then also able to ensure that they've got access to more than 3,000 service providers across the country, ranging from pharmacies to GPs to specialists to hospitals to ambulances across the board. And we also have a platform on our website that allows them to be able to actually book 24/7 to be able to access these services with no questions, no difficulty or anything of that regard.
Right. So Tapiwa, this is quite impressive because you've demonstrated to me that you have had an understanding of your market. 2, based on our research, you have moved from a startup to now delivering over 50 million payouts. Now, that's not an easy feat. Now, tell me, how is it that you were able to do that? 1, what was the motivating force? Secondly, what is the long term?
That's a good and a difficult question at the same time. I think the motivating factor...
We like asking difficult questions.
Yeah, great, thanks. So yeah, no one is ever ready for anything. But I think I'm motivated by the biblical illustration that if you watch the clouds, as a farmer, you won't be able to plant. You can never be ready for anything. You build the aeroplane as it flies. And I always say that you have to be ready for the problems that come tomorrow to create the solutions instantly, because the problems that you then overcome then give you purpose to be able to go into the next venture. So for us, the motto has been, we fix the aeroplane as it flies. And we found that there's so many aeroplanes in terms of problems that can't take off in our society that we need to fix as they fly. The question has been, do we get the aeroplanes to stay rooted on the ground, or we fix them as they fly? So when we find the problem in South Africa, we take off the plane, we fix it, it flies. But then the whole motivation has been to change the landscape of medical service provision across Africa. So the vision is beyond ourselves. The vision is beyond our country of origin. The vision has become global. And what I've seen is that as you do what you do, the picture becomes bigger. And ideas only become better when you execute them. So no idea comes out fully formed. It comes out like an embryo. And it can only become a baby and an adult as executed as you feed it. So we continue to feed that, and we look at the sky as the playground for success, because we feel that we've got a bigger mandate to change the landscape of service provision, not only in Africa, but globally. And also to create that global parity in terms of service provision for healthcare, and make sure that in line with the SDGs, that healthcare can become easily accessible to anyone. So I don't know if that answers your question, but... Okay,
great. No, yeah. I do understand. I mean, of course, there was the...
I didn't answer the bigger part.
Yeah, the bigger part.
The bigger part is we need to go global. Like I said, it's bigger than ourselves. We need to stretch ourselves. We see ourselves going global. There's so many markets that still need to be serviced. I think the Philippines needs to be serviced. The Caribbean market needs to be serviced. So many marginalized societies need to be serviced. So our vision is that anywhere where someone can leave their country of origin to be able to go and find a better place or a better living, to be able to support their families back home, we should be that market to support them to bring a better healthcare system for their loved ones in their country of domicile and origin.
Tapio, definitely a genuinely inspiring story. But maybe as a parting shot, as we conclude, I'd like to understand, aside the fact that I have a glimpse of the understanding when it comes to what motivated you to start, especially within the context of the diaspora and your experience in South Africa and so forth, what I'd like to understand is, what is your personal driving force to do this?
I think my personal driving force to do this is to leave a legacy, not just for me, not just for my family, but they say that, leave a trail so that people can be able to follow a trail, and not just footprints in the sand, because anyone can be able to delete those footprints in the sand. So I want to leave a trail that people can follow through in the healthcare system, that you can be able to change the world, not just to be remembered for existing and just to be able to say, you know what, we came, we saw, we conquered, but to say that there's a trail that everyone can be able to follow.
And as a leader in this industry, what's your message to the young folk, be it young, white, regardless of creed, but more so people that are young, looking at you and inspired by your journey? What is your parting shot?
My parting shot is that I can't remember the person who said this quote, but courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in the absence of fear. Where we've come is not that we are not fearful of anything. Going into a new market is the most scariest thing. And navigating a business from the ground up with no capital or nothing is the most fearful thing. And to deal with a lot of service providers and underwriters across the world is very difficult. But when you act in the face of courage, when you act in the face of fear, that is courage. Courage is not feeling fearless. It's being able to navigate your way around fear when you feel fearful in the most instances. I feel very fearful every morning, but I choose to wake up and act in the face of courage. And when we act in the face of courage, I feel that we can be able to change the world. So if we are going to have trailblazers around the world that are going to change the landscape of what we do around the world, you need to act in the face of fear.
Well, I think changing the world is what you're doing. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And thank you so much, our audience, for having us.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us at SAT Interviews with your host, Farai Ian Mvuti. You've heard it for yourself. I think there's an opportunity here for us to engage with the systems that are in. One of the weakest points within the healthcare systems in Africa is that we don't support them. Now, institutions like this enable us to change that. Now, I hope you stay tuned in. Next time we meet, it'll be another conversation. Thank you again for joining us. Farai Ian Mvuti, your host at SAT Interviews. Take care.